As you scrolled your feed this week, you probably noticed the restock videos, the extreme organization where every pan has a place, every cable has its own plastic container, and every toy is color coordinated. And hey, I'm a mom too, I fell for it all. I bought all the matching jars, I bought more spices that I needed so that I could fill my spice jars, and then I realized I didn't use half of them. I was tempted by the banana cutter, the apple cutter, the avocado holder, the onion holder, and then I realized, why am I giving myself more work? I'm already overwhelmed, days are already chaotic sometimes, and I just don't need extra cleaning or upkeep. But there's an interesting phenomenon that happens on social media that I think we need to talk about. Let's start with, why is this extreme organization so satisfying to watch and why it gets millions and millions of views? And that's because it's very satisfying, it's very aesthetically pleasing, and it creates those dopamine bubbles in our brains that makes us feel good. It makes you feel like you accomplished something even though you actually didn't do anything except for scroll your social media feed. So looking at the psychology behind this, it's a combination of that dopamine hit that makes you feel good and also the ASMR, it's the sounds and the visuals that kind of produce a calming, kind of tingling response when we watch these videos. It also gives you a sense of order, a sense of completion when you watch these restock videos or just kind of extreme organization that our brains actually like. And there's a psychological concept behind all of this called the Zeigarnik effect. So the Zeigarnik effect is a psychological phenomenon where the brain remembers the unfinished, the uncompleted tasks much better than the complete tasks. And this was discovered back in 1920s by a psychologist called Bluma Zeigarnik. And she noticed how waiters would remember these complex orders for every table as long as they were unpaid and the people were still at the table. The second that the people paid the bill and they left the table, the waiters seemed to completely forget the orders. They would completely forget all the details. And the reason behind all of this that's been discovered is that our brain keeps those uncompleted tasks at the forefront of our mind, just because obviously they need to be completed in our brain. So they create that kind of cognitive tension that keeps that information at the forefront of your mind. That's until the task is successfully resolved or completed. So watching these videos gives you that closure and it feels very satisfying. And there's nothing wrong about watching one of those videos and having that satisfying feeling, right? But that before and after can feel very satisfying. It can feel like closure. It can make you feel like you've accomplished something even though you haven't. And there's nothing inherently wrong with watching those videos, aside from the fact that it gives you that dopamine spike and then crash. But I think the real problem is when it starts making you feel like there's something wrong with you, like there's something wrong with your house, like you're not organized enough, you need to go out and buy more bins, more cleaning products, more little plastic containers for all of your items, how you need to go out and buy more laundry pods so that you can aesthetically organize your under sink cupboard. I think that's where the real problem comes in. When it makes you feel like you just need more, you need to go out and spend your money. And that's where we kind of move on to why this is a problem, the problem of all of these perfectly and extremely organized homes. Because the truth is, it is staged. It looks like that on social media. It's not meant for real life. Because what you are watching on those TikToks is not somebody's everyday life. You're watching somebody's perfectly curated Tuesday morning where they have this freshly filmed moment, this perfectly staged moment where they just buy a whole bunch of products, buy the containers for those products and just neatly stack them all. So it's kind of putting on a show. That is not real life. And so I think when we start comparing our real life, which is sometimes messy, which is not perfectly organized in all of those perfect containers, that's when we start to feel less than. That's when we start to feel like we're not enough. And the reason why there are a lot of these videos out there is because they monetize off of you. They just want that affiliate commission. Because, okay, I'm someone who has done this whole affiliate marketing thing as well. I have been on the kind of influencing side and I definitely used to promote a lot more products. I don't as much anymore because I've just kind of swapped to a more intentional lifestyle and I just don't want to promote that anymore. But I still kind of share some products that I use myself. And here's the problem especially with Amazon products and TikTok shop items and all of these items that have low value that are promoted a lot on these posts, right? Like you see those restock videos, they have a whole list of products you can buy after watching that video. And the thing with those products is that the commission for each of those sales is very, very low. So, you know, someone buys this little like cleaning spray thingy or a container bin or all of these little products. If someone buys that from that person through their affiliate link, they will get 10 cents. 20 cents. They will just get a little bit back. But it's such a low amount of money that what they need to do in order to make a decent income is to base it on traffic. So high amounts of traffic. Because all of these home products and organization products, they kind of sit on the low commission scale. And what they need to do, so the game of all of this is volume. They just need a lot of traffic. They need a lot of people buying a lot of these products in order for them to make a good income from it. And so this whole thing incentivizes them to buy those products or to get sent for free, because sometimes they do get all of those products sent for free to promote them in their videos. And so they need a lot of these products to showcase in order to get you to buy a lot of those products. So there's this constant stream of new products that they're just promoting for you to buy. And when we look at the market size, the home organization product is a multi-billion-dollar industry right now. So I think when we look at the restock videos, kind of the problem is not the fact that maybe that person enjoys perfectly organizing their snacks or perfectly organizing their cleaning products. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just the fact that they are promoting so many more products for you to buy that you probably don't need. And what they don't tell you is that they take all of those little cables, they put each of them in this perfect little plastic container, they take all of the kids' board games and puzzles, they organize them perfectly in these bags, and they do a lot of that micro organizing in these restock videos where, you know, they just organize in very tiny categories, all of the drawers, all of the bins. And I think the problem comes in when you put all of that in the middle of a house with a family actually living there. Because I know for us, you know, we're a family of 4, we have 2 small children. I know if I micro organize all of the things in my home like that, it would not stay like that. Or it would stay like that only if it would require from me to put a whole lot of effort into keeping it that way. But that would probably come at the cost of my mental health, and I'm not willing to do that. And so it's just not practical. And I'm someone who's quite minimal. I like an organized home, but I think when we take it too far, when we try to organize too much, it's just not helpful. It's not actually meant for real life. And as I was scrolling my TikTok, which I don't do often, but I did for this video, I realized there's so many fridge organizing kind of restocks and, you know, this extreme organization when it comes to your fridge. And I tried it before because especially in the beginning days when I was creating content and I just wanted my home to be organized, I thought that was the solution. So I went out and I bought a lot of those containers that you put in your fridge. You decant your strawberries from the plastic container they come in into another plastic container, and all of these bins that you put in your fridge to basically contain every little thing. And I realized actually I don't find that helpful. I mainly use the containers that already came in my fridge, like, you know, the drawers at the bottom, the egg holders and those kinds of things. But I noticed that when I put extra containers in my fridge, it just feels more cramped. It feels like I don't have enough space to put everything in. Not everything fits neatly as you see in these restock videos. And also it will add extra cleaning because now you have an extra container to clean in your fridge aside from the stuff that's already in your fridge. So I tried it for a while and I actually gave up on that fridge organization. Like, it doesn't always look perfectly tidy and I'm okay with that. Sometimes it's a bit of a Tetris game, right, to get everything in there. And what I find works for me for keeping the fridge organized and clutter-free of, you know, expired foods and things like that is basically every week, you know, when you get towards the end of the week and I know I've got a food shop coming, just the day before or just the day of, when the fridge is fairly empty-ish, I will take everything out, give it a quick wipe, throw away anything that's not good anymore and have it ready for the new food that's coming for the following week. And I found that for us, that just works so much better and it's much more streamlined. There's not a lot of waste as well. And I always think when I see these restock videos, when I see the, fridge organizing videos, they look so beautiful. They look so perfectly aesthetic. But I always wonder how much food waste is actually created from that. Because unless it's like a family of 10 living there and they actually eat all of that food, there's probably a lot of food that will go bad in those containers before it gets to be eaten. One thing I also noticed in these videos is all of the decanting liquid laundry detergents and laundry pods and those laundry scent boosters, all of these things into their special jars and their special containers. And they look really good. Like, they look too good. They kind of look like candy. And I think that's actually part of the problem. Because I think depending on the household, obviously everybody's different, everybody's lifestyle is different. But when you have small children, I think decanting all of those products into these beautiful jars can actually be a bit dangerous because it basically strips away the usually child-resistant packaging. I found this research that said there's roughly one call every 42 minutes to the US Poison Control about a young child under 6 being exposed to laundry products. So I think there comes a point where all of this like perfectly aesthetic lifestyle is more detrimental to us than actually helpful. And so decanting all of these laundry products into these beautiful packagings and putting them on display on your counters, I just think it's probably not the wisest. And I do sometimes empty packets into containers that we have just because it makes things easier. But I always make sure, especially for laundry products, they always need to have a child-resistant latch. It needs to be behind a door that children cannot access, that it's, got a little lock on it. And I do decant a handful of things like I find it easier to decant pasta because the pasta packets can be very flimsy. They can spill in the back of cupboards. So I do find that helpful. Same with flour or sugar. So there are a handful of things that I do decant because it just makes sense for me. And airtight containers can be helpful because they can just, extend the shelf life of that product. And I think it's also helpful to see how much of that product you have left. So I get the point, and I do find decanting helpful sometimes. But I think when we take it to the next level and we just give ourselves too much work, like much more work than is necessary, I think that's where it kind of takes it too far. And also, I think when you have a whole bunch of those jars, you kind of feel tempted to go and buy more to keep it filled up, to keep it restocked, and maybe buy more than you actually need. There's also rainbow organizing that I think sometimes is not really that helpful. And I actually love organizing some things in a rainbow color. Like, for example, I have some books back there and one shelf of those is actually in rainbow color, not every one of them. But I think when we try to rainbow organize, for example, all of the kids' toys or all of these things, it just never seems like go to plan. It doesn't stay that way, and it's maybe just a little bit pointless. So if your home is not rainbow organized, if it doesn't look perfectly aesthetic, I hope you know that there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean your home is cluttered. It doesn't need to be perfectly aesthetic. As long as it's easy for you to find, as long as it's easy for your kids to find and to use and to play with, then you don't need to have rainbow organizers. There's also the convenience lie. And this reminds me of the cookie jar videos that I see. And I don't know if this is a trend that was popularized by Khloe Kardashian, because I know in her home tour videos, she used to have a lot of these jars, probably still does, with perfectly organized Oreos and all of these cookies. And yes, it looks pretty. It looks very pretty on camera. It's very satisfying to watch someone organize their jar with all the cookies inside. But for most of us, that's not real life. Again, that's just a show, right? It's something they put on display for getting views, for getting likes on TikTok. It's not something that's realistic. And if we set ourselves all of these standards that everything needs to be color coordinated and organized in rainbow order and cookie jars perfectly organized, when we add all of these steps onto our already full mental load, I think that's when we're making our work so much harder than it needs to be. And there are also so many containers for your containers. So you see people buying a whole bunch of these, larger containers to store smaller containers. And sometimes it's just best to get rid of some containers. Like, for example, I realized I was trying to find a way to organize all of our Tupperware, all of those food containers, because we had so many. They were constantly like, lids were missing. I couldn't find them when I needed them. The whole drawer just felt so annoying whenever I opened it and I needed something from there. And it wasn't until I started decluttering and I realized I don't need a special organizer for these. I just needed less containers. And when you have less containers and you stack them on top of each other with their lid on, they take up maybe just a little cupboard or a little shelf. It doesn't take up that much space, and it also doesn't need any sort of special organizing system. There's just some containers stacked on top of each other. So that's where I think we kind of need to be aware of whether something is just pretty or practical as well. Because what we often see on social media is not necessarily decluttering or organizing. So we want to own less, we want to make our homes more functional, and instead of being told you just need to have less products, we're just constantly being told you need to buy more products to organize your products. Because making things look pretty is usually a product they can sell to you, whereas just keeping a practical kind of functional home is usually free, and so they don't make any money from that. So I think the solution here, because we are going to see these videos, and I just think it's important not to let it make us feel like we're not doing enough. And the two things I find that help me keep my home organized without going over the top into all of these like restock organizing, extreme organizing videos is one, to use some containers to make your life easier. Like for example, when you have a cupboard and you notice how things constantly fall behind, you can't find them, it's very hard to go through it. Maybe food gets expired before you get to eat it. What I find helpful is to put a bin in there so that I can put things in there. It's kind of like turning that cupboard into a shelf of sorts. So I do find that helpful. Also, corralling things into one spot. So for example, next to our back door entrance is where I noticed there were always garden shoes just laying on the floor. And what we did was just add a basket back there so we can throw all of those shoes in there. And also I do find it helpful to turn a junk drawer into smaller categories. I think as long as you don't go too small on like micro organizing every little thing in there. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to label all of it. As long as you know where those things are and you can, visually see them when you open that drawer, then that's fine. It doesn't have to look perfectly aesthetic. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this and what you have noticed in your feed. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in the next video.